My marriage ended the night I found the letter. It wasn't cheating, it wasn't money, it was worse. I've carried this secret for years, and saying it out loud might finally destroy me.
Welcome to Reddit Toxic Family Telltales channel. New episode every day.
My best friend refused to cut her vacation short after her own daughter tried to end her life. And when I stepped in to take care of the girl, she accused me of kidnapping her. 6 months later, I saw her crying on the courthouse steps because she wasn't even allowed inside. Let me rewind. My best friend, Claire, had always wanted to be a mom. Since we were teenagers, she'd talk about baby names, how many kids she wanted, the kind of mother she'd be. So when Julia was born, Claire was glowing. I was thrilled for her. It felt like she was finally living her dream. Our girls, Julia and my daughter Emma, grew up like sisters. Weekends, sleepovers, holidays, they were inseparable. Fast forward about 15 years. Claire asked me to keep Julia for a week while she took a solo trip to Bali. Totally normal, Julia practically lived at my place anyway. The first couple of days were exactly what you'd expect. Junk food, Netflix binges, late-night giggles. But on day 3, everything changed. I called Julia down for dinner, but she didn't answer. Emma told me she hadn't seen her since lunch, and this horrible knot formed in my stomach. I went upstairs, knocked on her door. Nothing. Tried the handle, locked. Julia never locked her door. My chest got tight. I grabbed the spare key from the hallway drawer, opened the door, and my world spun. Julia was sprawled across the bed, her breathing shallow, empty pill bottles scattered around her, and a folded note at her side. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my phone dialing 911. Emma stood behind me, sobbing, asking what was wrong, but I couldn't even get the words out. Everything blurred after that. Paramedics rushed in, asking questions I could barely process. I texted a neighbor to take Emma while I climbed into the ambulance with Julia. On the ride, I called Claire, heart racing, tears choking my voice as I told her what happened. And her response? Not panic, not fear, just hesitation. Then she said, "Is it really that serious?" Maybe she just wanted attention. I swear, my stomach dropped like a stone. Couldn't even respond. At the hospital, doctors explained Julia needed her stomach pumped immediately. I updated Claire, praying she'd understand the gravity now. Her reply? Changing my flight costs $200. That's expensive. And besides, you don't need to be there every day. That's why hospitals have nurses. I stared at my phone in disbelief, rage boiling in my chest. But Julia needed me more than I needed to scream at Claire, so I stayed. I used up my vacation days, slept in that awful plastic hospital chair 3 nights in a row, holding Julia's hand. One night, she whispered to me that she thought her mom didn't love her anymore. She asked why Claire wasn't coming back for her. I just hugged her tighter, because what could I even say? Meanwhile, I kept sending Claire photos and updates, clinging to the hope that she'd finally show some maternal instinct. But her texts got shorter, colder. While Julia cried herself to sleep, Claire was posting selfies on the beach with captions like, "Living my best life." That was the moment it hit me. The Claire I knew, the devoted mom she claimed to be, was gone. When Julia was discharged, I set up a safe room for her at my place. I tried over and over to talk to Claire, but she brushed me off every time. Finally, Claire walked through my door a whole day after getting back, bronzed from the sun and relaxed as if nothing had happened. She gave Julia the most half-hearted hug I've ever seen, then immediately asked about the suitcase she'd left before her trip. As I explained Julia's recovery plan, her expression shifted. Her jaw clenched, her eyes narrowed, until finally she snapped. She accused me of playing parent and overstepping boundaries. Then she spat out the words that still make me sick. It was probably just for attention. At that moment, a small sob echoed from the hallway. Julia stood frozen, tears running down her cheeks. Claire barely looked at her own daughter. My heart was pounding in my ears. I shouted at Claire that she chose cocktails on a beach over her dying child. She rolled her eyes, scoffing. "Teenagers are dramatic. You should have known better." That was it. I lost it. I told her she was selfish, that Julia's life was apparently worth less to her than a $200 flight change. Claire's voice dropped low, venomous. "You don't know what it's like needing a break from your kids." And in that instant, I knew our friendship was over. Claire grabbed Julia's bag and demanded she leave. Julia bolted into my bathroom, locked the door, and sobbed so loudly it echoed through the house. That's when Claire truly lost it. She screamed that I was kidnapping her daughter, and before I could even react, she had her phone out, calling the police. I told her, "Go ahead, call them. Let's see what they think about a mother who stayed on vacation while her daughter almost died." That only made her angrier. 20 minutes later, 2 officers were standing in my hallway, while Claire ranted that I was trying to replace her as Julia's mom. The officers looked visibly uncomfortable. I showed them Julia's hospital discharge papers. One officer asked, "Where's the minor now?" "In the bathroom," I explained. "Because she's terrified of going with her mother." The female officer gently knocked on the door. "Julia, I'm Officer Martinez. Can we talk for a minute?" After some coaxing, Julia opened it, her face blotchy and red. And Claire, instead of hugging her, she scolded her. "Stop this nonsense. You're embarrassing me." The officers exchanged a look, then asked to speak with Julia privately. Claire tried to object, but the male officer cut her off firmly. While Julia was with them, Claire paced the hallway, muttering loudly that I'd poisoned her daughter against her. Emma, bless her heart, pulled out her phone and quietly started recording. 15 minutes later, the officers returned with Julia and admitted this was bigger than them. They called in CPS. A caseworker, Ms. Thompson, arrived, interviewed Julia, and recommended she stay somewhere safe for 72 hours while they investigated. Claire was fuming, but she forced a smile, pretending to cooperate. When we went upstairs to gather Julia's things, Claire cornered me. Her voice was low and full of venom. You think you've won? Julia's mine. I'll ruin your life for this. What she didn't know was that Emma caught the whole thing on video, including Claire admitting, I don't even want to deal with a moody teenager. Do you think I enjoy this? When Claire stormed out, she slammed every door and sped off, tires screeching down my driveway. But before she left, she promised she'd be back with real authorities. That night, my phone blew up with messages. Claire had already blasted Facebook with posts about me being mentally unstable and kidnapping her child. Some mutual friends took her side. Others reached out in support. Couldn't believe it. A week ago, we were planning a summer trip together. Now, she was painting me as some villain online while her daughter was hiding in my house. The next morning, I brought Julia to therapy. As we sat in the waiting room, Claire barged in, demanding to sit in the session. I'm her mother. I have every right. The therapist, Dr. Chun, calmly pulled Claire aside to talk privately. While she was gone, Julia whispered to me, there's something I haven't told anyone. I found texts on Mom's phone. She was telling her friend Leah she wishes she could just leave, that she hates being a mom. My chest ached for her. She looked terrified. What if I tell CPS and they send me to foster care? I took her hand and told her the truth. The best way forward is to tell Dr. Chan everything. No matter what, you always have a home with us. Minutes later, Claire stormed out, yelling that Dr. Chan was biased and unprofessional, and didn't even look at Julia. Dr. Chan then pulled me and Julia in, recommending Julia stay in a stable environment for now, meaning my home. That afternoon, I got a notice. Claire filed for emergency custody. My stomach dropped, but soon after, Ms. Thompson from CPS called. Dr. Chun had submitted a formal report about Claire's neglect. The custody hearing? Postponed pending a full investigation. It should have been a relief. But I knew this was just the beginning of a war. Claire started blowing up Julia's phone with non-stop calls and texts, and it was like emotional whiplash. 1 minute guilt tripping her with, I guess you don't love me anymore. And the next, laying it on thick with, you're my whole world, baby girl. Then, as if that wasn't twisted enough, she'd switch to cold and manipulative messages like, stop exaggerating what happened. You're making me look bad. Julia showed me everything, every single message. My heart broke as I helped her block her own mother's number, while also documenting every screenshot for CPS. Imagine being 15 and having to protect yourself from the very person who's supposed to protect you. That's where Julia was. Of course, word spread through our social circle. Most of our friends sided with me once they understood the truth. But Claire? She still managed to convince a few people that I was some deranged woman trying to steal her daughter. Those friends started calling, even showing up at my door, begging me to stop keeping Julia away. One afternoon, desperate for a break, I decided to take the girls out for ice cream. Just something small, a sliver of normal. But in the parking lot, who do we run into? Claire's best friend, Megan. She immediately pulled out her phone, started filming, and shouted about parental alienation and how I was brainwashing Julia. The girls were terrified. I hustled them back into the car, their ice cream still melting in the bags, both of them sobbing. That's my life now, documenting everything, checking in with my sister about legal strategy, being a buffer between Julia and Claire's spiraling behavior, trying to keep Emma safe too. The CPS investigation was still ongoing, and Julia's school counselor kept calling with concerns. Julia wasn't attending classes, not regularly, not without panic attacks. And late at night, when the house was quiet, I'd sit there asking myself, how did it come to this? How did 15 years of friendship collapse into this nightmare? Was Claire always like this and I just ignored it? Or did something inside her break? I may never know, but I do know this. Julia deserves safety. She deserves love. And if Claire won't give her that, then I will. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared. Claire already called the cops with false accusations once. What happens when the 72-hour period is up? What if the courts actually send Julia back to her? The countdown to that deadline nearly broke me. Julia hadn't slept through a single night since the hospital. I'd wake up to hear her crying at 2 in the morning, curled up in the hallway between our bedroom and Emma's. Too scared to be alone, too considerate to wake anyone. My husband, Rob, was amazing. He made her pancakes in the mornings, helped with homework, kept the girls laughing when I didn't have the energy to. But the night before the 72 hours ended, Julia had the worst panic attack I've ever seen. She couldn't breathe, her whole body shaking, gasping over and over. Please don't make me go back. Please don't make me go. We finally got her calmed down. Emma insisted on sleeping in her room that night, just to keep her company. When Rob and I sat at the kitchen table afterward, We felt utterly helpless. What if they make her go back to Claire? I whispered. You saw her tonight. She's terrified. Rob squeezed my hand. We'll figure something out. Natalie's coming tomorrow, right? She'll know what to do. Natalie, my sister and a family attorney, showed up at 7 a.m. sharp in her navy pantsuit, armed with a laptop and a thick stack of papers. She turned our dining room into a makeshift law office. After combing through all the screenshots, recordings, and notes we'd collected, she gave a firm nod. You've done a good job documenting. This will help. But listen, family court can be unpredictable. Judges give biological parents a lot of leeway. At 9 a.m., Ms. Thompson from CPS arrived for a follow-up. She interviewed Julia again, then pulled Rob and me aside. Her expression was serious, but kind. Based on my investigation and Dr. Chen's report, I'll be recommending temporary guardianship for you while we continue the assessment. Relief rushed through me, until she added, but Claire's already hired an attorney. She's fighting hard. There's going to be a hearing tomorrow. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Hope you enjoyed playing mommy. See you in court tomorrow. The rest of the day was a blur. Natalie coached Julia gently on what to expect if the judge wanted to speak with her. Rob took Emma to his parents' house so she wouldn't be dragged into the stress. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My brain ran in endless circles of worst-case scenarios. When we walked into family court, I was shocked. Forget the dramatic courtrooms you see on TV. This one looked more like a conference room. Claire was already there, flanked by a slick attorney in a tailored suit. She didn't even look at me, just stared straight ahead with the faintest smirk. Julia clutched my hand so tight it hurt. Natalie kept her other hand on Julia's shoulder. The judge, an older woman named Judge Patel, scanned the case file forever before finally speaking. I've reviewed the reports from CPS, Dr. Chan, and the hospital records, she said. I'd like to speak with Julia privately in chambers. Claire's attorney immediately objected, claiming I'd coached Julia. Judge Patel shut him down with a single raised eyebrow and escorted Julia away. Those 15 minutes? The longest of my life. Claire glared at me the entire time, whispering furiously with her lawyer. When Julia returned, she looked drained, but calmer somehow. Judge Patel adjusted her glasses and delivered her ruling. Based on the evidence and my conversation with Julia, I am granting temporary guardianship to Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds for 30 days, pending further assessment. Claire gasped. Her attorney opened his mouth, but Judge Patel wasn't done. Mrs. Davis will have supervised visitation twice weekly at the Family Services Center. She will also complete a psychological evaluation and attend parenting classes before the next hearing. Claire shot to her feet, face flushed red. This is ridiculous. She's my daughter. Judge Patel's voice cracked like a whip. Mrs. Davis, control yourself or I'll hold you in contempt. This arrangement is temporary and in your daughter's best interest. The look Claire shot me as we left the courtroom? Pure hatred. She stormed past Julia without even glancing at her, her lawyer chasing after her. In the parking lot, Julia collapsed against me in tears. But this time, they were tears of relief. I don't have to go back, she kept whispering. I don't have to go back. Not for 30 days, Natalie clarified gently. And hopefully not after that either. But we need to be ready for a longer fight. And she was right. The 30-day guardianship turned into a war zone. Claire missed her first 2 supervised visits, then showed up to the third all smiles, showering Julia with expensive gifts and taking selfies to plaster online. The supervisor's report noted she seemed more interested in curating Instagram than reconnecting with her daughter. Then came the full-on smear campaign. Claire posted daily about being a mother fighting to get her daughter back from a mentally unstable woman. She twisted Julia's overdose into an accident, accusing me of exploiting it to kidnap her daughter. Some of our friends bought it. Jessica, a friend of 10 years, texted me to stop the drama. Michael, another, left a voicemail saying he was disappointed in me. Julia saw it all. She'd start to make progress in therapy, only to see her mom's lies online and spiral. One night she showed me a group chat where kids from her mom's neighborhood called her a liar and an attention seeker. She sobbed. Why doesn't she just let me go? If she doesn't even want me, why fight so hard? I had no answer. All I could do was hold her and promise we weren't giving up. Emma was hurting too. She lost friends whose parents sided with Claire, and she even got suspended after confronting a kid spreading rumors that Julia's suicide attempt was fake. 3 weeks in, Claire escalated again. She crashed one of Julia's therapy sessions, screaming so badly that security escorted her out. That same day, someone keyed my car at work, the word thief carved into the paint. I couldn't prove it was Claire, but the timing wasn't subtle. Rob, ever the rock, installed security cameras and changed our locks after Julia admitted Claire still had a spare key from years ago. Felt paranoid, but it also felt necessary. As the 30-day review hearing approached, Ms. Thompson finalized her report, recommending guardianship extend at least 6 months. Dr. Chun backed it up, explaining how damaging it would be to force Julia back into Claire's custody now. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of optimism. But then, 2 days before court, Claire's attorney dropped a bombshell. An emergency motion claiming Julia's father, Mark, wanted custody. What? Claire had always told us Julia's dad abandoned them as a baby. wanted nothing to do with her. Julia had never even met him. Natalie was furious. "This is a stall tactic," she snapped. "They know they're losing, so they're pulling in a complication to buy time." The judge postponed the hearing 2 weeks to investigate. I was shaking with frustration, but Natalie leaned across the table and said something that chilled me. "Maybe this isn't a bad thing. Claire's been painting Mark as the villain for 15 years. But what if that's not the whole story?" Julia was hesitant at first, but deep down, curious about the father she'd never known. With her blessing, Natalie hired a private investigator, and within days we had a name and an address. Mark Hansen, living just 3 hours away, remarried, 2 little kids, working as an architect. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Like Claire's horror stories of a deadbeat dad who vanished without a trace. I was nervous. What if he really was terrible? What if he didn't want Julia at all? But we had to know the truth. Natalie called him first, laying out the situation like the professional attorney she is. To our shock, Mark didn't hesitate. He asked to video chat with us that very night. When his face appeared on the screen, my breath caught. Julia had his eyes, that same green sparkle. His chin too. The resemblance was undeniable. He looked nervous, but his voice was thick with emotion. "Julia, I can't believe it's really you." Julia was frozen, staring at the father she'd been told wanted nothing to do with her. I squeezed her shoulder, encouraging her. Then Mark began to unravel the truth. His truth. And it was nothing like Claire's version. He told us he and Claire had been college sweethearts. The pregnancy was unplanned, but he'd wanted to step up. They tried to make it work but broke up when Julia was 2. Still, he paid child support. He had regular visitation until Julia was 4. Then Claire got a job 200 miles away. She promised they'd figure out a new schedule, but instead the excuses started. "Julia's sick. Julia has plans. Now's not a good time." Then silence. Mark had hired an attorney, tried to fight for his rights, but Claire kept moving, changing addresses, changing jobs. He sent birthday presents, Christmas cards. Everything came back unopened. And then, when Julia was 7, he got a cease and desist letter from Claire's lawyer, claiming he was traumatizing Julia, that she was afraid of him and didn't want contact. His voice cracked when he said, "I didn't want to force myself on her if she was scared, so I stepped back. But I never stopped paying support, never stopped trying, never stopped loving her." He showed us a box of returned letters, cards, little gifts. Years worth of memories she'd been denied. Julia sat silently, tears sliding down her face. "She told me you left because you didn't want a kid," Julia whispered. "She said you never paid, never even tried." Mark shook his head, eyes glistening. "I never stopped trying, Julia. Not once." It was a lot for her to process. After the call, she shut herself in her room for hours. When she finally emerged, her face was swollen from crying, but her voice was steady. "I want to meet him, in person." That weekend, Mark drove down. It was awkward at first. How could it not be? But watching them together was surreal. The way they both talked with their hands when excited. The way they laughed at the same things. Mark brought photo albums of Julia's early years, pictures she'd never seen, and stories about relatives she'd never known. Julia discovered she had 2 half-siblings, a stepmom named Karen, an art teacher, grandparents who had saved her unopened birthday gifts for years, praying for a day they could give them to her. While they bonded, I stepped outside to give them space. That's when my phone buzzed with a notification from Claire. A new post, a photo of her looking tragically sad beside an old picture of toddler Julia. The caption read, "Missing my baby girl, who's been manipulated into thinking I'm a bad mom. Now her absent father is pretending to care after 15 years of silence." Money changes people. I wanted to hurl my phone across the yard. The audacity. But then Rob showed me the comments. Claire's carefully crafted story was unraveling. Former classmates chimed in, calling out her lies. Mark's sister even posted proof of child support payments and photos of the returned gifts. Her narrative was cracking, finally. When the extended custody hearing arrived, Mark was there. Not asking for custody, but standing by Julia's side. His testimony about Claire's alienation was devastating. The evidence he brought, letters, receipts, records, was a wrecking ball. Claire's attorney tried to paint him as some deadbeat swooping in for sympathy, but the truth was undeniable. And then the real shocker. Claire's boyfriend, Taylor, walked into the courtroom to testify. The look on Claire's face, pure panic. Taylor told the judge that Claire had admitted to cutting Mark out on purpose, that she'd been using Julia as a prop for her single mom image online. Claire exploded, screaming that Taylor was lying because she dumped him. Judge Patel slammed her gavel, threatening contempt of court just to calm her down. By the end of that day, Judge Patel had seen enough. She extended my guardianship of Julia for 6 months. Claire was granted only supervised visitation once a week. Mark got visitation rights too, and family therapy was ordered across the board. Claire was told she'd need parenting classes and individual therapy if she wanted any chance of regaining custody. Outside, Claire stormed up to me, her face twisted with rage. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You've turned everyone against me. I'll get my daughter back." Mark stepped forward, his voice firm. "Claire, stop. This isn't about you and Sarah. It's about Julia. But Claire's eyes locked on me, full of venom. You think you're perfect? I'll make sure everyone knows the truth about you. Taylor, standing nearby, physically pulled her away before security had to intervene. I was shaking, but Julia, for the first time in months, she looked calm, strong. She had stood in front of a judge and said out loud that she did not feel safe with her mother, that she wanted to stay with us. That took courage beyond words. For a while, life finally settled. Julia continued therapy. She started spending weekends with Mark's family, slowly, carefully building that relationship. She even went back to school part-time, supported by her counselor. Claire, she went to one parenting class and quit. Missed her first 2 supervised visits. Then, when she finally showed up to the 3rd, she reeked of alcohol. The session was cut short. She doubled down on her social media campaign, of course. Daily posts about how she was the victim, but people weren't buying it anymore. The tide was turning. And just when I thought maybe, just maybe, the chaos was dying down, the phone rang. Julia had received dozens of anonymous texts, messages calling her names, telling her to just finish the job this time. She had a panic attack at school, found crying in the bathroom by her counselor. We rushed to the police with screenshots. The officer was sympathetic but honest. Anonymous texts were nearly impossible to trace. His advice? Change Julia's number immediately. That night, Julia finally slept with the help of new medication. But Emma, sweet, protective Emma, showed me something online. A fake profile, supposedly written by Julia, claiming she'd made up her suicide attempt for attention. Emma's voice was quiet, but firm. Mom, I think Aunt Claire made this. Look at the words. Seeking attention. Causing drama. That's exactly how she talks. She was right. It was Claire's voice, just shoved into her daughter's mouth. We reported it, got it taken down, but the damage spread quickly. Julia refused to get out of bed the next day. I didn't push her. Instead, I called Dr. Chun, who scheduled an emergency session. I was working from home when the pounding started at the front door. Claire, disheveled, furious. Where is she? I want to see my daughter now, she demanded. I cracked the door with the chain on. Claire, you know the rules. Supervised visitation only. You need to go through family services. You've poisoned everyone against me. Julia, Mark, even Taylor. You've ruined my life. I forced my voice to stay calm. Leave. Now, you're violating the court order. She shoved against the door, rattling the chain. I'm not going anywhere until I see Julia. I'm calling the police, I warned. Go ahead. They can't keep a mother from her child forever. I slammed the door shut and dialed 911. Minutes later, officers arrived. Claire immediately flipped into victim mode, sobbing that she was just a concerned mom worried about her daughter. But these officers knew the case. They escorted her off our property, warning her she'd be arrested if she returned. As she left, she shouted over her shoulder, I'll never stop fighting for her. Never. The house was shaking with tension. Julia sobbed upstairs. Emma fumed, muttering she wished Claire would just disappear. Rob started pricing new security systems and even muttered about moving neighborhoods. Dr. Chun gave Julia an exercise. Write a letter to Claire. Not to send, but to finally get the poison out of her system. Julia wrote for hours, page after page. When she let me read it, one line shattered me. Mom never really wanted me. She wanted the image of me, the perfect daughter to complete her perfect story. But I'm not her story. I'm a real person. Despite everything, she was finding her voice. And then, the breakthrough we'd been waiting for. Police traced those anonymous texts to a burner phone bought near Claire's apartment. Security footage showed Claire at the counter buying it. Even worse, Taylor handed over screenshots where Claire bragged about teaching Julia a lesson and making her regret choosing Sarah over me. Claire was arrested, charged with harassment, cyberbullying, and violating her restraining order. She made bail, of course, but her case? Destroyed. Her own lawyer quit. The court suspended even her supervised visitation. The news spread fast. People who had sided with her reached out to apologize. Julia got supportive messages from classmates who had once believed the lies. And for the first time in months, the tide had completely turned. Mark invited Julia for a full weekend with his family. Watching her pack, nervous and excited, reminded me. Beneath all this trauma, she was still a teenager. Still a girl who deserved normal things like siblings and birthday cakes and inside jokes. For the first time, I believed she might actually get them. The weekend with Mark went better than any of us could have imagined. Julia came home practically glowing, bubbling over with stories about her half-siblings, ages 7 and 9, who apparently thought having a big sister was the coolest thing ever. She helped her stepmom, Karen, with an art project and discovered they both loved photography. And Mark? He took her hiking to his favorite overlook above the valley. Turns out Julia loved it too. As I helped her unpack, Julia sat on her bed and said, almost in disbelief, "It feels new, but also familiar. Like Mark has little habits I do. We both organize our books by color, not author. And we both hate sandwich crusts." I smiled. Biology's wild like that. She grew quiet, thoughtful. I keep thinking about all the years I believed Mom's lies. All the holidays, all the birthdays we missed. It makes me so mad. But also sad. I don't understand how a mom could keep a dad away when he actually wanted to be there. I didn't have an answer, because honestly, Claire's behavior defied explanation. The next morning, Julia came down for breakfast with a look I'd learned to dread. She handed me her phone. A new text from an unknown number. Hope you enjoyed playing Happy Family with Mark. Don't forget who your real parent is. This isn't over. My stomach dropped. When did you get this? I asked. Late last night. I didn't want to wake you. I called Natalie immediately. She told us to report it to the police as yet another violation of the restraining order. The officer who took our statement sighed in frustration. We'll add it to her file, he said. But honestly, I'd suggest Julia get a new number. 2 days later, we got word Claire had checked herself into a mental health facility, citing emotional distress. Her criminal hearing was postponed. Her new attorney filed a motion arguing she needed treatment, not punishment. Part of me wanted to believe it, to hope Claire was finally getting the help she needed. But another part of me couldn't shake the feeling this was just another manipulation play. Still, the 3 weeks she stayed in treatment gave us a rare pocket of peace. Julia focused on school. She grew closer to Mark and Karen. Dr. Chun even noted progress in her sessions. When Claire was released, she came back with a diagnosis: narcissistic personality disorder. She was put on medication, therapy, probation, and a fresh restraining order that barred her from contacting Julia for 1 full year. The custody situation shifted. With Mark now involved, he petitioned for shared custody with us. Claire's attorney kept pushing to preserve her parental rights. Judge Patel ordered a full family evaluation to determine what was best for Julia. Through it all, Julia stayed with us, but weekends with Mark became a regular thing. Slowly, she was building a bond with the father she'd been denied for so long. Claire, meanwhile, played the role of the compliant patient on paper, but online, she was still posting passive-aggressive content about the system failing mothers. Then Julia's 16th birthday rolled around. Her first one without Claire. She asked for something small, just family and 2 of her closest friends. The night before, the doorbell rang. Package sat on the porch. The label read, "Happy birthday from Mom." Julia stared at it like it might explode. "I don't want to open it." "You don't have to," I said gently. "But what if it's something weird? Or dangerous?" Rob carefully opened it. Inside was a photo album and a letter. The album held baby photos we'd never seen, her first steps, first birthday, holidays. The letter was surprisingly tame, expressing regret and asking Julia to remember the good times. Signed simply, "Love always, Mom." Julia flipped through the pages quietly. Then she shut the album and handed it to me. "Can you put this somewhere safe? I'm not ready now, but maybe someday." Her actual birthday dinner was beautiful. Mark and Karen brought her a camera she'd been dreaming about, plus a handmade quilt stitched with pieces of her grandparents' old clothes. Emma gave her a friendship bracelet with charms only they understood. Rob and I gave her a letter and a house key, an official invitation to stay with us for as long as she wanted. It wasn't flashy, but when Julia clutched us both, whispering thank you over and over, I knew it meant everything. As the custody evaluation dragged on, Julia split her weekends between us and Mark's family. Special occasions we celebrated together. Claire stayed on the periphery, technically following her treatment plan, occasionally sending cards through her lawyer. 6 months after Julia's attempt, we stood in court for the final custody hearing. The evaluator recommended a unique arrangement. Julia would stay primarily with us, with regular time at Mark's. Claire would only be allowed monthly supervised visits, and only if she stuck to her treatment plan. We braced ourselves for Claire's meltdown. But shockingly, she didn't fight. She looked different, softer, tired. When asked to speak, she actually apologized. "I know my behavior has hurt my daughter. I've been focusing on myself, not on her. I want to change. I want to be better, even if it's not how I pictured it." Judge Patel seemed cautiously impressed and approved the arrangement with mandatory reviews. Outside, Claire approached us. Julia tensed and I pulled her close. "Julia," Claire said quietly, "I know you don't believe me right now, but I'm trying. I really am. I hope someday you'll let me prove it." Julia gave the faintest nod but said nothing. Claire didn't push. She walked away. Later, Julia asked me, "Do you think she meant it?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "People can change, but rebuilding trust, that takes time. And you don't owe her forgiveness until, or unless, you're ready." Julia nodded firmly. "I'm not ready now. Maybe someday, but not now." That night, I found her sitting on the porch swing under the stars. "Sarah," she said softly, "thank you for saving my life. Not just that night, but every day since." I wrapped an arm around her. "You're the one who did the hard work, Jules. I'm just glad I get to see who you're becoming." She whispered, "I used to think I didn't matter. Now I know I do." And in that quiet moment, I realized how close we'd come to losing her, and how much stronger we'd all become because we didn't. 2 years later, Julia is thriving. A 3.8 GPA in college, surrounded by friends, still checking in with a therapist now and then. Holidays are shared between our home and Mark's. Emma visits her dorm on weekends. And Claire? She's quieter, respectful of the boundaries Julia set, still reaching out here and there, but on Julia's terms. Just last week, Julia called with huge news. Her artwork was selected for a prestigious student exhibition. They want family there, she said. So I need you, Rob, Emma, Dad, Karen, and the kids. Her voice was so sure, so steady. You're all my family. And in that moment, I knew. The friendship I lost with Claire would always sting. But what we gained instead, this messy, chosen, beautiful family was worth everything.
Thanks for watching. Today's train wreck is over, but tomorrow's ride is already on track. Subscribe so you don't miss it.